Hey friends, welcome back to Belle's Library. Today I'm going to give kind of a mid-month check-in for January and talk about the books that I have been reading, what I'm currently reading. But before I get into my books, I wanted to show you guys this. So some of you may have watched my video on my Postal experiment. I made a video back in, I think November. I'll link it here somewhere for you and put it in the description box. It was my November monthly wrap-up. And in that video I talked about a book called The Englishman Who Posted Himself, and it talks all about this guy and his fun postal experiments that he conducted throughout several decades with the Postal Service when it first started coming in to being a real big thing in the late 1800s. He was from England, and anyway, it's a really interesting story, and so you guys can check out the video for that, details on that. But in that video I said that I was going to conduct a postal experiment of my own, and I was leaving these little postcards around for people to fill out. On the back of them I have just kind of like a please fill this out, this is my postal experiment, here's my address, and then I stamp them and then I leave them places. Well, I have gotten 3 back, so that is super exciting. When I went out to Prescott, Arizona in November, I left probably 20 of these around the different states between Arkansas and Arizona, and so to have 3 back is pretty cool. This one here is from a person named Otis, so they can put their real name or their pretend name. And then all of these were found in Prescott, and all of these, I think, yes, were found in little free libraries. So I stuck these in the books that I was leaving in little free libraries, and the people who came to the libraries found them and filled them out and sent them back. So it's various little notes that they have left on here for me. One says that he has been to the Postal Museum in Washington, D.C., and so he thought that that was pretty cool. This other one talked about how she found this after the Christmas parade in Prescott that evening, and she talked about what float she was on, if I happened to have watched it, and so that was pretty sweet. And then this third one, I left it in her little free library that was at her house, and so she talks a little bit about that, and that her and I are both members of bookcrossing.com. And so she was mentioning that, and that she had found it in the book called The Princess of Cleves. So anyway, I thought that was neat, and I wanted to share that with you guys, that my experiment is paying off. So I might come up with a different kind of postcard with some other kind of saying, just to sort of change things up a little bit. But it looks like little free libraries are the good place to leave those if you want them returned. All right, so the books that I have read this month in January so far, I have read 2.5 novels and several short stories. So the first novel that I finished was this, The House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And I read this for my Nathanuary in January challenge. You guys can check that out here. And I'm not going to talk too much about it yet because I know there's at least one other person who watches my channel who is reading it also, so I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I did enjoy it, and it was what I hoped it would be, which was kind of like a gothic-y, sort of sensational, kind of social commentary. Anyway, I liked it. So that's the first read, and on my wrap-up video I'll talk more about that. And then I read Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington, and I had never read this before, although when I picked it up I thought that I had. However, I was stupidly mistaking and mixing it up with Frederick Douglass's, also his autobiography. But I really liked this. I know that there's a lot of controversy out there about Booker T. Washington, and for good reason. I understand the sentiments behind that, but I think for his time, I think his heart was in the right place. The thing that I really love about him that has just even kind of made him one of my heroes, he is so kind and positive. He was so positive. He was so very quick to forgive, much quicker than I think I would have been. So basically, if you're not familiar with this story of Booker T. Washington, he was a former slave who was able to, be emancipated, and then he went on to school, and he worked very hard to put himself through school, and then he ended up establishing a school in Alabama, right? So it was a school for Black individuals, many of them former slaves, and many of them much older than he was. So he found that a lot of people that wanted to be educated were, their 40s, 50s, much older than him. And so he just really had a lot of compassion and just a desire to help people find stability. And I think that's kind of where some of the controversy comes in, because people of our, modern times look back at some of the things that he said and think that maybe he was kind of a sellout, when some of his, Black brethren, his former slave brethren, were trying to advance up into politics and government spots. And he was saying, hey, you guys just need to learn basic life skills like, hygiene and being able to take care of yourself and being able to provide for your family. And so the controversy is that he was selling them out, like not promoting them to be all that they could be, right? To be the best that they could be. And I don't necessarily think, after reading through this biography, I don't think that's necessarily where his heart was. Again, I'm not sure. But I think that maybe it was more that he was saying, let's start here at the basics so that we can have some stability, right? He was talking about how the toothbrush really just changed the lives of these people because, with good oral hygiene, it changes everything about the way you present yourself to people and how you are, perceived, and just people's enjoyment of being around you in the first place, all those things, right? Like we know what it's like when someone has bad oral hygiene and we are face to face with them, right? And so it was things like that. He's like, let's get these basics under control, guys. And then that way we have a stable platform to build from. And I think that he was thinking long term, while many were thinking, right now. And I feel like I probably would have been in that place, not his place, but in the place of these others that were like, I'm going to do everything I can do right now because I've been living in this horrific, life where I'm not even considered a full human. I'm going to do whatever I want to do as fast as I can. And so that's completely understandable. But I think that I do sympathize with some of his thoughts on things, just for the sake of trying to find stability for his people. But I have so many things in here tabbed and underlined. He just has so many encouraging quotes and just thoughts. He has such a positive perspective on things. And I think this one quote I read really sums up his mentality about all the things that we maybe want to cancel him for, right? He says, I learned the lesson that great men cultivate love and that only little men cherish a spirit of hatred. I learned that assistance given to the weak makes the one who gives it strong, and that oppression of the unfortunate makes one weak. And this is the key right here. I would permit no man, no matter what his color might be, to narrow and degrade my soul by making me hate him. With God's help, I believe that I have completely rid myself of any ill feeling toward the Southern white man for any wrong that he may have inflicted upon my race. I was thinking about, that is what it means to truly forgive somebody, right? I am not going to let him degrade my soul by making me hate him. I refuse. So it was almost an act of rebellion to love. I thought that was so wonderful. He says other things like, those who are happiest are those who do the most for others. He says that several times throughout the story. Even when he's talking about the KKK, he is able to talk about it in a very poised manner. I thought, this guy is just incredible. He is definitely one of my heroes for sure. There's so much that I want to share from this story, but I won't. It's a pretty short read. If you guys are interested, check out the autobiography, Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. All right, so then those are the two full-length stories that I've read. I'm currently in the middle of The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, and I have not read this before. I read The Moonstone, but I haven't yet read this one, and it is so good. I am enjoying it so much. He is just absolutely hilarious. His characters cracking me up. So the story is told in a narrative style from many different perspectives. I don't know about many. I think I'm up to 4 perspectives now, but they're just, they each have their own personality and they're so funny. He is a genius when it comes to humor. So it reminds me a lot of Dickens. Apparently he was a good friend of Dickens and wrote at the same time and wrote for the same publications and all that. So you can definitely see how if they didn't influence each other, it's at least easy to see why they were friends, because they have very similar senses of humor and probably personalities, it seems. So I'm enjoying that. That's I will give a review for in my wrap-up video. And then I've got 3 books of short stories that I have been reading from. So I have been reading, actually this one's poems. This is Emily Bronte's Complete Poems. I got this in December as a gift from my husband, and so I've just been reading a little bit. I was reading a poem each day, and then life got busy, and so I'm just kind of reading a poem every now and then. And really loving. Some of these are just super beautiful. I mean, they're all beautiful, but you know, some of them are just really touching. So I've got that I'm going through. And then Elizabeth Gaskell's Gothic Tales, which I have already commented on in a previous video. I'm not liking this so much, but I'm on page 102, so I'm probably a little over a third of the way through, which I've just been kind of putting it off because I'm not liking her stories very much. But I will finish it, maybe even by the end of the month, we'll see. And then I'm also reading from Nathaniel Hawthorne's book of stories. This is the Norton Critical Edition anthology thing called Nathaniel Hawthorne's Tales. Now he has tons of different compilations of short stories out there, and so I don't know how many of them are actually like a whole body of unique stories, or if they just kind of kept at the time, like rotating them through, like here we'll put these 3 new plus 5 old in this compilation, and then next year we're going to release one that has like these 4 new and these 7 old or something, because I find that some of his tales kind of carry into different compilations of stories, you know, compilations, I don't know, whatever the word, there's got to be a better word out there, but synonyms are not coming to me. Anyway, and so this one is one of my favorite books just ever. Like, it is so trashed because I read it and write in it for the last 15 years probably. I have been devouring this thing. But I did read this month. So far I have read the story called My Kinsman Major Molyneux. And so the funny thing is, okay, well, I would just like to make a comment on reading comprehension, which I've actually talked about this previously as well. But the fact that for some reason, I think a lot of us have it in our heads that like we go through school, right? Like grade school, middle school, high school, and then like once we graduate, we're kind of done. And so we go to college to sort of like center in, right? Narrow down and kind of zoom in on a subject, and we learn what we need to learn, and then like we're done. And so like once you're done with your like formal education, then you're formally educated and now you're done. And I think some people, maybe not everybody, but me and others probably have it in their head that like that's when we've stopped kind of learning, right? So when you're, I mean, not completely stopped learning, but that's when you're stopped like academic learning. Like for instance, in my 30s, I had this major jump in reading comprehension, which really surprised me because I thought by the time I was in my 30s, like I probably should be where I, you know, am gonna be. Like I probably tapped out at my level of understanding as far as reading comprehension goes, which is not the case at all. Like it completely, I don't know what happened, but something just kind of burst and I suddenly was able to understand things I wasn't able to understand before. And so, you know, looking back on that, now I understand and realize that because I just continued to read, I continued to grow my brain and I continued to learn and I continued to expand my aptitudes and abilities, and ta-da, now I can read stuff I couldn't have read before that, right? Well, I think I've had another one of those jumps in the last couple of years. I feel like I am understanding things that I didn't understand before. So part of it is, you know, I think our brains continuing to grow and be able to, you know, just comprehend better, but also our life experience really plays into that a lot. And the more life experience you have, right, the more you're able to reflect on the things that you're reading and learning, and the more you're able to sort of process them and all that stuff, right? So yay for that. I'm really glad that we don't have to stop learning. And I know that's kind of a juvenile thought in the first place, but anyway, it was my thought, so what do you know? Anyway, I say all that to say that I've read this story, My Kinsman, probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 times, but it's just in this last reading of it that I understood what it was actually about. I mean, I've always got the basic gist of it, but I realized this time that this is actually kind of an allegory on the politics and blah blah surrounding the Sons of Liberty. Okay, so in this story, there is a young person who comes to town, Robin. And if you look up the symbolism of the name Robin, it symbolizes hope and the chance for personal growth. And I looked that up this read, but in the past I had written hopeful right here because reading this little story about Robin, he seems so hopeful here in the beginning when he has come to town. And then later when I looked it up, I was like, oh, that's why he named him that. Because always keep a symbolism dictionary handy when you're reading. I think I have one around here somewhere. There's a really good one. I'll try to remember and link it in the description. The Illustrated Encyclopedia of Signs and Symbols, I think is what it's called. I have used that since high school. It is such a great resource for looking up symbolism, the meaning of words. Sometimes even names are in there, but you can look up, names. A lot of times authors will use character names to symbolize character traits. But okay, anyway, enough on the homeschool lesson, right? Looking at the whole thing, it's a allegory, right, of America and Britain. He published this in 1831, so definitely like a different kind of mentality and just sentiment between America and Britain than we have now. So that was interesting and just kind of funny that, all of a sudden I had this big epiphany. Oh. So that's what I've been reading. It's been a great start to 2024. We have had a couple of snow days, so that has been really nice for reading. I read a lot yesterday because we are snowed in here. We live up on a hill and we drive a big old Ford Transit van, so you can't really get on and off the hill very well unless it's packed out. So we've just been kind of hanging out up here and enjoying the snow and enjoying the wildlife kind of coming through every now and then, but for the most part it's stinking cold. We actually had pipes break, so we have our water off and a plumber coming tomorrow because it has been that cold, which is not normal for us here in Arkansas, so our pipes are not heavily insulated, but they will be after the plumber comes, that's for sure. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. Have a beautiful day and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.